certified as a leadership coach and trainer with the John Maxwell leadership team. Are any of you familiar with John Maxwell? Okay, so I love John Maxwell. I love his leadership philosophies and frameworks, and I'm authorized to teach and train teams from across all sectors, not just healthcare. So I do a lot of leadership training and coaching. So if any of you would like to have some leadership training done with any of your teams, I'm your girl. I would appreciate your business. So call me, reach out anytime. I'm also a cancer survivor. Prior to getting cancer, I was the administrative director of nursing over 2 of the Kettering Health Network hospitals. I oversaw all of inpatient nursing for Soin Medical Center and Green Memorial. I was a certified oncology nurse when I worked bedside, and I cared for thousands and thousands of cancer patients. Cancer care was my passion. I loved everything about it. I didn't love cancer by any means, but I loved caring for people who were facing one of the scariest things that they would ever go through. I left the bedside and was promoted up through leadership. And when I was administrative director over the 2 hospitals, I was diagnosed myself with a very aggressive form of breast cancer. And thankfully, I'm 6 years out from active treatment. So I'm very, very fortunate. Thank you. I feel incredibly blessed every day. Truly, truly is a gift. I was diagnosed at an early stage, super fortunate, but even as an early stage breast cancer patient in the first 2 years from my diagnosis, I had over 120 appointments, tests, and procedures, 6 surgeries. I went through 5 months of chemotherapy, 25 rounds of radiation, and 12 months of targeted biotherapy infusions. It was not a battle for the faint of heart. It was tough. And even as an oncology nurse who had cared for so many patients, I didn't respect the trauma that breast cancer patients endure. I didn't know what I didn't know until it was me. And that's why I wrote my book, just to share with others the realities of going through a breast cancer journey. How many of you know someone who's been diagnosed with breast cancer? Look at that, super prevalent, right? And I know I have a friend here who is also a survivor. Any other survivors in the room of breast cancer or any cancer? Yeah, it's extremely prevalent. So today, instead of really promoting my book, I thought that I would just share from the heart of survivors. When I wrote my book, I surveyed 374 women who had been through breast cancer. And I also have the privilege of walking alongside women and men battling all kinds of different cancers. I kind of function as a mentor, and with my oncology nursing experience, I help people make treatment decisions. I help explain their pathology reports, what their options are. Unfortunately, the medical system leaves a lot of gaps in cancer care. And I've talked with so many patients who are getting ready to start chemo in 6 hours, the night before they start their first chemo, and they still have no idea what to expect, have not been educated or coached on what's going to happen to them. So I have the privilege of doing that. And since I've written my book especially, I have been contacted by dozens of survivors who have thanked me. And it really has resonated with me because they say, "Thank you for seeing me. Your book helped me feel seen. You gave words to things that I couldn't speak myself." And that has been such a blessing to me because that's why I wrote it. I don't want anyone ever to go through this journey, breast cancer, any cancer, life-changing, altering crisis, feeling alone or misunderstood. And I think a lot of cancer patients and survivors feel very misunderstood. So today, I just want to share a little bit from the people that have shared with me and some of the things that they want people to understand and know. So if that's okay, we will get that underway. First, I want to share just very briefly some statistics to demonstrate the prevalence of breast cancer specifically. Breast cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer among women worldwide. Same is true for the United States. About 1 in 8 women in the U.S. will develop breast cancer at some point in her lifetime. Some of the most recent research shows 1 in 6 or 1 in 5 may develop breast cancer, and we're seeing it in younger and younger patients. A woman is diagnosed in the United States with breast cancer every 2 minutes. More than 42,000 women will die this year. I believe the diagnosis number is close to 400,000 will be diagnosed this year. Thousands of men are diagnosed every single year, and a lot of times their cancers are very advanced because they're not doing self-breast exams, they're not aware like women are, and about 3,000 men die every year to breast cancer. Surprisingly, genetics and family history only account for 10 to 15% of breast cancer patients, and roughly 85% of patients who are diagnosed have no risk factors, no known risk factors. I was part of that 85%. I had no family history, no reason to believe that I was going to have cancer. Excuse me. My cancer was caught on a routine mammogram that I was 10 months late for. Thank God I went when I did because it was very aggressive. And if I had waited another 10 months, it probably would have been too late. So women, ladies, get your mammograms, and husbands, brothers, uncles, tell your wives, sisters, daughters to get their mammograms. And if there's any family history at all with a first-line relative like a mother, then those mammograms need to start at a younger age, around 35 years old. And then breast cancer is the second leading cause of cancer death among women. The first is lung cancer. So it's devastating when it happens. And a lot of people think that cancer is simply, surgery and chemotherapy, and then you're done. But cancer literally changes everything in your life. Every single area of my life was touched. It threatens security. We have a total loss of sense of control. Our identity is threatened. Privacy and modesty is out the window. You're undressing for all kinds of people all over the place, different people coming in the room, marking all over your chest. It is not a fun thing to go through. Confidence can be rocked, sense of normalcy out the window. Marriage, family, relationships, friendships change. There's something very real called cancer ghosting that happens. It's a phenomenon that's been studied, and there's a lot of research out there. Probably it's not true just for cancer, but anytime someone goes through a major crisis, they experience oftentimes a disappearance of friends. And the women that I surveyed shared that with me over and over and over again. And unfortunately, I experienced that myself. And it just adds salt to the wound. It's a very painful thing to go through when you're already going through a traumatic health crisis. People say over and over that the cancer doesn't end when the treatment ends, and that's so true. Survivors live with a constant fear of recurrence, and hormone-positive breast cancers, especially, can come back at any time. I cared for women who were 25, 30, and 40 years out who would come in with metastasis from their original breast cancer, 20 or 30 years prior. So hormone-positive breast cancer especially is risky for distant recurrence. There's survivor's guilt that happens with cancer patients. We make friends with other people going through the same thing that we are. And I can't tell you how many friends that I've lost, women that I walked through my journey with who had the same diagnosis, going through treatment at the same time, who have lost their lives. And that can bring a real sense of survivor's guilt for those of us who were not so unfortunate. Financial stress. When treatment ends, the bills don't stop. So there's still piling up of bills, medical bills that have to be paid that create a tremendous amount of stress on survivors. Body image issues. This is something that many of us are not prepared for, not just breast cancer, but any kind of cancer. When you lose a part of your body, causes some identity crisis. And for women, losing our breasts is extremely traumatic. And losing our hair, a sense of identity is gone. Compromised health and lifelong side effects is another issue that survivors deal with. I know that I worked full time through all of my treatment. I look back and I don't know how I did that, honestly. But I kept thinking, okay, if I get through my last chemo or I get through that last radiation, life's going to pick up right where it left off. I'm going to be fine. It's just a bump in the road. But it was about 6 to 9 months after my very last infusion when I realized I was not getting better. Like, in fact, I was, unraveling. And that's when I stepped away from my career at the hospital just to take some time to heal. And it was a very difficult time in my life and a very lonely time. And the effects of my treatment impacted me for about 5 years. So I'm 6 years out now. And just in the past year, I felt like I really kind of turned the corner. There are many, many challenges with intimacy. And not just sexual intimacy, but feeling safe psychologically, to be honest about what we're going through with our partners and with our close friends. That's not talked about. Most women are not prepared for the body issues, the body image issues, and the issues with intimacy. In my survey, I surveyed many women about their relationships with their partners and how their treatment had affected it. And sadly, the numbers were pretty high for relationships that had ended because of the trauma of going through cancer. Anxiety is another issue. Have you all heard of anxiety? Getting scans. So when cancer patients go in for scans or blood work, anxiety is a real issue. It's called anxiety. Sleepless nights, worry, fear, and about 30% of breast cancer survivors suffer from PTSD and serious psychological effects. And then loneliness is another issue, feeling completely isolated, not feeling safe to speak up, feeling like they're going through it alone. So if you have survivors in your life, I'm just hoping that this will just shed a little bit of light on the reality that the survivors in your life may live. Survivors need to feel seen. There's a significance in feeling seen and not being dismissed. And all of you have the opportunity to do that for the survivors in your life. I got thousands and thousands of comments on the survey that I gave to the 374 survivors. And one of the questions that I asked them is, what do you wish people understood about your cancer? So I'm just going to share a little bit of their comments. This is just scratching the surface, literally probably had over 3,000 comments. But survivors want you to know that it's a lifelong journey. It's not over when the treatment's over. Cancer is much more than a physical battle. It's just as much emotional, mental, psychological, and spiritual. And that's 100% true. Nobody feels lucky to get a free boob job. That's a big misconception, especially with breast cancer. One survivor said, disappearing from our life is the cruelest thing that you can do to anyone going through treatment. And a lot of times it's just because people don't know how to show up. They don't know what to say. They feel helpless. And so it's easier to just kind of keep the distance. But that's very harmful to people who are walking through it. One survivor said, don't just wait around for patients to ask for help. They don't even know what they need. Just be proactive. I wish people would understand that not all cancers are the same. And that is so true. I can tell you as an oncology nurse, I could have 5 patients with the exact same diagnosis, same stage, taking the same treatment regimen, and they would have 5 very different experiences. So the temptation to compare is real, but not every cancer is the same, even if it's the same diagnosis. Don't compare me to other people who've had breast cancer. This happened to me all the time. I was working full time. I was exhausted by the time I would get home, and I didn't go to the gym and work out. And I don't know how many people, told me stories of their friends who had breast cancer, who worked out all the time, were hitting the gym. I mean, it put a pressure on me, and then they would look at me like, well, what's wrong with you? You're not going to the gym. And I probably should have, but I chose to work. And, but all it did, isolate me more from that person. So don't compare. How I look and behave on the outside is nothing compared to what's really happening to me. That one I heard over and over again. Losing our breast is a very traumatic experience. Cancer is a very hard, lonely experience. And then just listen. You don't need to have all of the answers. I think sometimes we feel like we have to make it better when we try to just find words to fill space. And a lot of times those words are not helpful. To create that space for someone to share honestly, just listen, just be present. I'm not the same person I was before cancer, and I never will be. And that is absolutely true. I know in my life, cancer has changed me forever. It changed my perspective on life. It changed the way I live my life. It changed my relationships, my priorities. My health is forever impacted from the treatment that I had. So it changes everything. I live in fear that my cancer is coming back every day. So this adds to the PTSD. A lot of survivors live in constant fear, whether they verbalize it or not. A lot of times it's in the back of our minds. A headache could be a brain metastasis. Our hip hurts, we think we have a bone met. I mean, it's crazy what our minds can do to us and how scared we can become. Another question that I asked the survivors was, what were the things that people said to you that were difficult to hear or that they should never say? So I've got the top 10 that these survivors say, please never say these things to someone going through, and this is breast cancer specifically, but much of it would apply to other cancers. The number one thing was, at least you get new boobs. So this, I can tell you, going through, I had a double mastectomy and I did immediate reconstruction, and I have had 4 revision surgeries. It has been a very long, painful, not glamorous process. I would give anything in the world to have my imperfect, warm, soft boobs back that I had before cancer took them. So please don't say that. I think, a lot of times we want to say, look at the bright side, you get a boob job, but it is not something any of us would ever choose. You're lucky you got the good kind. So I've heard this so many times, and I'm guilty. I was guilty of this, even as an oncology nurse, because I didn't understand that breast cancer was so traumatic. I took care of patients with pancreatic cancer and lung cancer and brain cancer, bone cancer, the biggies, like that have very poor prognoses. I didn't understand breast cancer patients. Most of our care is done outpatient, and I was on the acute care side in the hospital. So I didn't see a lot of breast cancer patients. So when I would hear breast cancer, I'm thinking, oh, it's not lung, so that's better, right? I was guilty of that until I went through it myself and understood the implications of walking that journey. So there is no good kind of cancer at all. Are you cured now? That's another thing that we hear all the time. Well, you're in remission. You're cured. And yes, technically, there's no evidence of disease, and we hope that it stays that way. But again, we constantly have that fear of recurrence. And then back to normal now, right? This was another one that survivor said so many people said to them, like, as soon as that treatment's over, it's like, okay, let's go. Let's just pick up where we left off. And we can't do that. And then you look so healthy. So again, sometimes the way that we appear on the outside isn't true of what's going on the inside. And it puts an undue pressure on us to fake it a little bit and be stronger or appear stronger than we actually feel. And then you're so brave. A lot of times people said this to me, you're so brave. Cancer doesn't know who it's messing with. You're the toughest woman I've ever known. And all of that was meant with the best of intentions. But what it does is it puts pressure on us to appear that way and to not be vulnerable and not be able to show what we're actually going through because people think that we're so strong, right? So it can have the opposite effect. We have to be so careful with the words that we choose when people are suffering. And then this one, my aunt had that kind of cancer, or my friend or my colleague. I had women that reached out to me that I didn't even know that sent me Facebook messages telling me that, their friend had the same kind of cancer I did, and she only lived for 2 years. And I mean, crazy stuff. People do that, and they want to offer advice. They want to give you all kinds of, um, health tips and things that you need to do, comparing to other people, and it is not helpful. And then the at least. At least is one of the most non-compassionate things that you can say. At least you caught it early. At least you're alive. And we're grateful to be alive. I can tell you that. I gained 60 pounds through my cancer journey, and it was very difficult on top of being bald and losing my boobs. I did not feel good about myself. And I had someone very close to me said, "Who cares if you're fat? You're alive." So, in her own way, trying to encourage me, but really minimized what I was going through. And then this one, was it because of this or that habit? I had medical professionals say to me, "What did you do to cause that? What did you do to get cancer?" One woman that I knew, or I thought I knew well, pressed me continuously, asking me if I was an alcoholic, as if I had done something to deserve the diagnosis. And then you should be grateful. We are grateful, but the emotions are very complex. So remember these 10 things. The next time you have a friend or a loved one going through cancer, you may feel tempted to say something to be encouraging. Use that checklist. So instead of saying those things, just say, "I'm here." And it's okay to not know what to say. You can say that. "I don't know what to say. This is so unfair. I love you." Simple as that. "I'm so sorry you're going through this. What can I do to help you today? How can I best support you? I'm praying for you." And then I'll sit with you. You cannot overstate the power of presence. Cancer taught me and the survivors that I interviewed that courage is not the absence of fear. It's actually moving forward in the face of fear. Courage is not pretending that everything's okay. Fear and faith often coexist. You can have a very deep faith and be very scared at the same time. So people who are going through it, there are some religious people that think if you're scared or if you're suffering, then you don't have enough faith. And that's just not true. Asking for help and being vulnerable is actually strength. And it opens up a lot of really healing pathways in your life. Joy is a decision. We truly can choose joy. And I wrote in my book a chapter on choosing joy and share a couple of stories of women that walked before me and the joy that they chose and the profound impact that they had on my life. And then again, the power of presence cannot be overstated. And then this one for me was probably one of the biggest learnings and takeaways that I took from cancer, is that grief and gratitude are not mutually exclusive. So every grief has woven its way into almost every chapter of my life since cancer. Cancer took a lot from me. I am just now, like I said, in the last year, I'm kind of in my comeback era. I'm finally finding myself again. But there's a lot of grief and a lot of loss that I still grieve. Things that have changed in my life that I'll never get back. But at the same time, I'm so grateful. I am so thankful. I'm so thankful to be here. I'm thankful for my health. I'm thankful for the favor that God has given me, undeserved. But if someone needs today with me, like I said, unfortunately, but if you want to scan that QR code, you can order the book. I would be so grateful for your support. Again, I didn't write this book for me. I wrote it for other people walking this journey, so that they won't feel alone. And the feedback that I've gotten, even from people not impacted by cancer, has been really amazing. I had a woman that lost her husband last year, and she read the book and reached out to me and said that she saw herself on every page because of the grief that she was walking through. So I feel like God gave this book to me. I was inspired to write it for a reason, and my hope is that it will get into the right hands and help someone along the way. And the feedback has been very affirmative and very rewarding. So I would appreciate your support, or if you know anyone going through cancer or a difficult time, maybe consider gifting them one of these books. And most importantly, one day a loved one close to you may hear the words, "You have cancer." And when that happens, I hope that you'll remember you don't have to fix it. It's not up to you to make it better. And that presence, your presence in their life, and just showing up with whatever you have, a little bit of love, a hug, a kind word, a prayer, a text, that's enough. You don't have to fill the space with empty words. Just be there for them. And that is it for my little talk with you today. I would love to connect with you if any of you are interested in leadership training, or I also do a lot of speaking on breast health and women's health and self-advocacy in healthcare. And I share a lot about the cancer journey and the gaps in care with healthcare providers as well. So I customize leadership training. Anything that your team is facing, we can customize a workshop or any kind of training that you need. So I would love to hear from you. And thank you again for this opportunity. If you have a survivor in your life, please go give them a hug, tell them you see them, you love them. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. All right. We will pick for the prizes today, and they were provided, our store prizes, by Josh Lyons. All right. First one is 582. 582. 582. White 582. Okay. And 629. 629. All right. All right. That's the same table. Lucky table today. And again, if anybody would like to, you stay for a little bit, hang out. So if anybody wants to talk to Tiffany, feel free to talk with her. We'll leave that up. Let's go ahead and stand. And remember, in everything that we think, say, number two is a very false. Number three, and number four, will it be better to all, sir? Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your week.